Only things King Gray could remember from his time before the void were vivid. Being in his room alone, looking over a large city from a bird's eye view, lying down with a heavy body and closing his eyes. Poisoning? Assassination? Oh well, nothing more could be done about it, so he may as well accept death and what goes with it. Hopefully, no choir of seeing babies would meet Gray at the pearly gates. This mysterious light at the end of a long tunnel greets him, the thing he could never believe in. And then, voices. Congratulations on a healthy baby boy! After his eyes adjust for the first time, he would see his new parents. A beautiful woman with long auburn hair, and a father with sharp blue eyes. Despite being a baby, he could understand the language by memory, so that's a good sign. The charming motherly smile coming from the woman gave an air of parental love and guidance, while the father held a strong jaw and fiercely sharp brows. But instead of the strict man he was expecting, Art, Gray's new name, appeared a complete childish dolt. Taking in the surroundings, everything seemed normal until Art realized that no technology of any sort was present. Only wooden walls, some candles illuminating the room, and a few hung-up garments resting upon wall hooks. As the first weeks began to trickle by, the dynamic became clear. Art's mother, Alice, was a kind and loving woman who held the reins tightly in this family. Reynolds, his father, was a charismatic and overall dependable man provided his childishness could be ignored. Despite the grace and thankfulness of being born into a loving family, life's start is filled with many abhorrent difficulties not even his worst enemies would have willed upon them. Lack of limb control and the inability to control certain, bodily functions. Many years as a king holding title in his country, and the hope that this would all be a dream to wake up from, were possibly the only things that kept him sane. The more time spent, the more Art began to learn about his new world. In a city market full of chatter, Art sees many people carrying weaponry of various shapes and sizes, along with various vendors selling very suspicious looking vials they coin as medicine of some kind, which I'm sure is totally fine. Once at home from the marketplace, Art begins to think in silence to himself while lying in his crib. Knowledge is power, and with all the information he had collected over the past weeks, he may finally have a concrete understanding of what to expect from this world. His thoughts are quickly interrupted by his dad picking him up and yeeting the child into the air like a rocket. If there were no roof, he may have gone into low orbit. While Alice is understandably concerned, Ray just couldn't help himself, as that it is what his father used to do with him as a kid. No wonder he's such an airhead. He then proceeds to spin the poor baby around like a gyro toy in his arms, almost getting a nasty stain on his shirt for the efforts. What stops him is Art's leg getting knocked on a wooden shelf, with Alice now set to remind him what an angry mama bear looks like. Ray is sent to the corner with a few injuries of his own, while she comforts a crying Art in her gentle embrace. What happens next is what brings Art's attention to the true reason this world seems so different. With a palm over his injury, Alice would simply focus her energy. Within seconds, a green glow envelops the wound and patches it up, showing firsthand the effects of his mother's largest talent, magic. Perhaps Art didn't know everything there was about this world. Not yet, anyway. In his previous life, Art had been a king who had outdueled all opponents and led armies across the world. Yet his most powerful achievement at this moment was learning how to crawl. This little king dashes across the room with intent until hitting a mirror, stopping him in his tracks to stare at the perfect reflection of his adorable face. Both parents find this highly amusing, as Art tells future ladies to prepare for heartbreak, as a cute little monster would be on the loose. Such heartwarming stuff here. As Alice puts Art down for his nap with a kiss on cheek and whispers sweet dreams, the young boy waits patiently to hear what he'd been waiting for. With the creaking close of his door, he starts his new mission to learn more about this world. Throwing his blanket out and using it as a soft landing cushion, Art manages to climb out of the crib and make his way across to the study. With about 1 hour until Alice would be back to check on him, Art would learn everything he could from the books. First, the continent he had been born in, Tikathen, consisted of 3 kingdoms: Eleanor, the enchanted elven home deep within a lush forest; Darv, the vast underground kingdom home to the dwarven population; and by far the largest, most populated kingdom, Sapin, the human kingdom. In both his world and this one, a monarch system is present, but here it is inherited instead of earned. This world was incredibly archaic compared to the one Art was used to, but that was because of the one key difference, namely magic. Where Art came from, there was a power called Ki that many practitioners used via rigorous training to strengthen their bodies and weapons. Here, a similar force named mana exists to be used in largely the same way, with one key difference. While Ki exists solely inside a person, mana exists everywhere in the environment, and any ability to have control over it is largely genetic. This ability is only really found in 1 out of every 100 children. Mana has a myriad of useful applications, with the most common two being augmentation and conjuring. Augmenting allows the user to enhance their own capabilities by drawing in magic, using it to prop up various aspects such as attack, defense, strength, agility, and so on. One of the few weaknesses to this class of user is limited capabilities over range. The stark opposite to augmenters, conjurers emit mana to the outside world and use it to freely control their surroundings, but must draw mana from the outside world in order to form any kind of spell. Alice is a rare form of magic user called a deviant. These people are a special brand of mage that can emit a unique type of restorative magic that can heal physical wounds. A mage's first awakening, according to the book, would be early adolescence to late teenage years because of how long it takes the mana core to naturally form. Art couldn't help but think of the old method taught to form a ki center, given how uncannily similar both powers sounded. To form such a center, children were taught to meditate and sense the fragments of ki within their bodies, then gather them into a single place. As Art would attempt to start creating a magic core though, he would find his time was up. Alice had come to take him back to bed, but before that, someone would require a diaper change. Ew. Alice sits down in the sunlit study with her journal, opening to a fresh page and dipping her quill into a new pot of ink. It had been just a bit over 2 years by that point, yet every single day Alice felt she was learning more about her baby Arthur. The conclusion that Arthur is the most adorable baby had been reached. With the most intelligent little eyes and cute little patch of auburn hair, Alice knew that one day he would end up getting himself in trouble. To curb this early, she had to become a strong and dependable mother, while avoiding the parental death trope, because it's not like Ray would be of much use. Trying to teach Arthur how to fight when he was barely out of the gate, having just learned to crawl? Okay pal, you're just asking for trouble with the wife. Who teaches a 2-year-old how to sword fight? Arthur also seemed to enjoy going to the small merchant square in downtown Ashburn, so instead of going weekly, it was scheduled every other day to watch him grow. Arthur seems to love the variety available in these stores, anything from shiny diamonds and gems to watching a man perform a small fire spell with sparkles behind his adorable little eyes. Alice still tries to claim that these outings are to have fresh food in the house and for Arthur's education, but we all know she's just a doting mother in denial. Though with a father like Ray, Arthur is sure to be interested in adventuring when he's older. Alice could only hope that he would be able to do better than most stupid teens trying to make it on the front lines of adventure. Now if only something could be done about Arthur's fascination with the study room and its books. While a tempting solution would be to move his crib into the room, that would be a solution for the future. And with a gentle thump, Alice closes her diary to continue writing another day. Arthur stands by the window watching his father as the work gloves come off. Standing in sunlight and the green grass with many clouds overhead, the old man raises his arms and begins to ready some kind of mystical spell. Taking his time to get it right, Reynolds lifts a few pebbles on the ground and with a mighty lift of his arms, throws them ahead in an attack. As it turns out, a rather pathetic attack. Despite Ray trying to make himself seem a lot cooler than he was, he could have easily picked up and thrown the rocks 3 times the distance with half the effort. Alice comes to join Arthur with a gentle head pat, remarking with annoyance that Ray had ruined the front yard yet again as the man picks up his gloves. Arthur had learned fairly early that his father was an augmenter. The moment a leaf lands in the yard, Ray begins practicing his martial art. Powerful punches, several high caliber kicks, an elbow jab, and a throw slap fast enough to make a blast of air. When he's finished, Arthur decides it is time to get back to studying, despite being, 2 years old? And tries to climb down on his own. Alice takes this as him being tired and decides that it's time for a nap, which Arthur very much disagrees with. With the cutest face he can possibly pull, Arthur begs his mother one more time to go read books in the study. which she tries to fight mentally and of course gives into, because the cuteness of a baby will almost always win. While Alice convinces herself she is not a doting mother, and Arthur tells himself that such a display was not embarrassing in the slightest, he walks away to the study. Alice stands in the doorway for a while to watch him read, until a large crash outside makes her investigate what Ray is up to, leaving the little king to his own devices for a little while. The instant she is gone, Art closes his eyes, putting two hands together in a form of meditation. His biggest accomplishment thus far was not the collected knowledge of this world, but rather the progress he had made at only 2 years of moving all the tens of thousands of mana fragments in his body. Not easy for the body nor mind, Arthur had done good work in piecing everything together. When Arthur manages to collect the last few pieces of mana together, however, an explosion not just rocks the land, but completely destroys his childhood home and everything inside it. Alice is knocked to the floor as the water she brought for Ray clatters to the ground, the man himself rushing over to grab and protect his wife from the remnants of the huge blast. After the fiery explosion ripped through Reynolds' clothing and stones were done assaulting his body as he sheltered Alice, she begins to come back to her senses. By law of motherly instinct, Alice's first words are that Arthur was still inside. Ray hesitates for only a second before running headfirst into the flames to save his son, the mark of a true loving father. Using his great strength to force apart the debris of his now destroyed home, Ray can only stand for a moment before his knees begin to buckle under the weight of what he's witnessing. Cold shivers pour down his spine like icy water as a nervous laughter takes hold. Alice asks what's wrong, coming up behind him to help look for her son, but she too is stunned beyond disbelief by what she sees. Not even 3 years old, and Arthur has already formed his magic core and awoken as a little mage. As the boy descends from his position, floating amidst the ruins, he remarks to himself that he's never felt better, and even the trees look more vibrant. It is here that he realizes he shouldn't be seeing trees as he was just inside. Yeah, way to go, little child genius, you blew it all up. Skipping forward a full year, a lot has changed in their daily lives. The house has been completely rebuilt from foundations up, and Alice begins teaching Arthur how to read and write, alongside basic mana manipulation and augmentation training from Ray. At first they did basic workouts, as sparring with such a small child was out of the question, but it wasn't too long before Ray decided that his son would be okay to begin practicing with a wooden sword. At 4 years old, Arthur was already doing mock sparring with his dad. Since Ray wouldn't let Arthur get away until before dinner when he wanted to study, the little king decided to just go for it. With a bit of concentration and clear focus, Arthur struck the stick one more time, cleaving it cleanly in half. When a bewildered father is asked if his son can go back inside now, Ray blindly says yes. Here we finally learn about the purity of mana cores. Each and every one starts at black because impurities and blood from the body mixes with it. But as time goes on, it begins to shift. First to red, then orange, yellow, silver, and finally white. Each distinct stage has 3 separate shades to it, and the lighter it becomes, the stronger the mage and purer the core. As Arthur attempts to meditate, he is once more thwarted by Alice calling for dinner time. With a healthy dish of roast meat, carrots, and vegetables in front of him, Arthur begins to chow down whilst finding it very annoying that he cannot get any alone time. Ray seems to concede to something in his mind and finally admits over the dinner table, "Honey, I think it's time we get Art a proper mentor." As his mother and father duke it out over the dinner table, Arthur sits and waits for them to finish. Alice claims that Ray said he would be able to teach their son all he needed to know, and while Ray agrees that was true, he was not expecting their son to be such a prodigy at manipulating magic. Alice doesn't want their son to be whisked away to some city leagues away at only 4 years old. They both turn to Arthur, and Ray claims that the boy has a big say in this as well, because it's his future. Does he want to go and learn from the best in the big city of Xyrus? Arthur responds with a counter question. Why don't the two of them just go with him to meet the teachers? This takes both of them off guard so hard that once the abrupt silence finishes its due course, they both burst out laughing, having never thought of going all together as a family. Alice would feel much better if she were there when her baby boy was tested, and Ray claims that everything is then sorted. They would all be going to Xyrus together, and so, Arthur was a little shocked to hear his parents already preparing for the long, arduous journey to the big city that very night.